What's up, gang? Welcome to The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now listen, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me.
Hey, lucky us, we have another friend. Darius Mirshahzadeh is with us. And Darius, you're relatively famous in the entrepreneurial world, whether you like it or not. And I know you do a fair amount of public speaking. You've written a best-selling book. You've hired thousands of employees. You've had all kinds of successful companies. You've never made a paycheck other than the ones you wrote for yourself, which I want to talk more about. But whenever you public speak, someone says, "How do you want me to introduce you?" So I thought I'd give you the chance of introducing yourself the way you wish you'd be introduced. So what say you?
Actually, so by the way, I've never been called famous before, so that was a first. So
It's a big moment.
Yeah, my ego is so happy right now. It's interesting, like that my response, I will tell you, is probably been changing a lot over the last year or two. If you had asked me that question 2 or 3 years ago, I would have answered like, serial entrepreneur, author, host of a, really popular podcast. And maybe I would have said conscious leader. And all those things are true. CEO, all the good stuff. But I don't, I don't know. I think now it's much more like I'm a soul searcher that's trying to create big impact in the lives that I'm supporting. So
Yeah,
that's a line for me right now.
A soul searcher
yeah.
that creates impact in the lives that you're interacting with. Is that what I heard? Okay.
Yeah.
Soul search. I love it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm in a much more grounded place than I was even a year ago.
Wow.
Okay, so my experience, this is actually given to me by our friend Vern Harnish during a particularly difficult business time. He's like, "How long has it been since you've taken a break, Mike?" And I said, "I don't know, like 15 years." He goes, "No, Mike, every 7 years. Every 7 years. The life cycle's in 7 years. 7, 14, bar mitzvah, confirmation, 21, drinking age. In every culture, every 7 years, you need to reset." Are you at a reset? Are you at your 7 years?
Hard read. It's interesting though. I don't think I made it 7 years from my last reset. But yeah, no, I'm in a transition period. I'm transitioning from a business that I founded a couple years ago that is going to be very successful. That I was a co-founder and managing partner within a private equity firm, and I'm off right now, kind of. I'm in a non-day-to-day role with that firm, and just kind of tending to the gardens that I planted before a little bit. And I'm going to Europe with my family for 2 months, and then I'm going to go to Burning Man, and then in September I'm going to show up and go build some new stuff.
I'm going to Burning
Mike,
Man.
before you go further, I think and Darius, you'll see this, that I need to interrupt Mike because he knows his guests so well, and he assumes everybody knows them just as well as he does, and knows all the inside jokes, and that's all fine and everything. But I want to take the audience around, along the journey, I guess. And if you don't mind, Darius, can you go just a little chronological, maybe just like kind of, hey, this is how I kind of got to where I was, and then I'd love to come back to this is that breakthrough, like why you are resetting. Because, but we need the preamble before we get to this is why you're on this transition part. If you don't mind,
I love that. I love that because Mike's assuming I'm way more famous than I am, I think. So look, I am a serial entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur. I grew up in a multicultural family, half Persian, half Italian. My mom's full Italian. My dad's full Persian. Father was an entrepreneur. was forced to come here when they took Iranian or American hostages in Tehran in 1979. I was there too. I was a year and a half old. Was born in the United States though. I have a twin brother and a sister. Grew up in Orange County, Southern California, and grew up watching my dad be an entrepreneur. Did not have a particularly good relationship with my dad. He was pretty traumatized from his experience of having to leave his life and country, but was given the gift of watching a person build, like same thing that Mike said. Like the only paycheck he ever got was the one he created for himself. Um, and from what I understand is my dad's dad was an entrepreneur. So I just think it's kind of in our epigenetic code to like go do things for ourselves. And so I started really like my first business. I was 9. My brother and I had a candy empire that got shut down by our principal in 4th grade, like legitimately shut down. But we were like trading candy. We were like buying candy, and then we go and like go to like a Smart Final and upgrade to bigger like bulk.
Yep,
I was a
yep.
wholesaler essentially, but it was my first successful business. And so, it's interestingly enough, fast forward to about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I was asked to speak at UT Austin Business School, and I was like, man, how should I start this presentation? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be in front of these 20-year-old kids. I wonder what they think it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I said, I should list every single business I've ever built and whether it was a success or not. And I defined a success as something that made $1 of profit. And then I said, a real success is something I'm proud of. Like I'm like, oh, this is like not only did it make profit, but like I considered it a success. Since I've had businesses make profit that I thought were a colossal waste of time that I wish I never had started. Right. So the punchline here, John, is that, and by the way, I didn't realize this, so I said it, I had started 23 companies in my life, businesses in my life, and I'm 40. I just turned 47 2 weeks ago, so I was 45 when I said this. Of that, 9 of them had made $1 of profit, 9 out of 23, and of those 9, 2/3 of them, six of the 23, I would have considered a real success.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, of those 23 businesses, they generated over $1.4 billion of revenue and a couple $100 million of profit. And by the way, I didn't get, that's not where I started. Where I started was with my candy empire when I was 9. But I segued that into, I was a nightclub promoter. I had a nightclub business in college. That was the first $100,000 I ever lost. I got in the mortgage industry where I've spent a lot of my time. I built the 10th largest Ginnie Mae securitization desk in the United States, helped own hundreds of thousands of loans, serviced over 300,000 loans, about $31 billion worth of loans, sold that company, went into advising CEOs. I've been advised about 50 CEOs in the past few years, wrote a book called The Core Value Equation, and then, which is how do you operationalize values in a company, which we had done a very good job of in my last business, The Money Source, or my last business. So that was 3 or 4 businesses ago. But that was probably my biggest like public win. Like I grew the business from myself and a couple of founders, and I was the CEO of that company to 1,000 employees in 3 years. And that business is doing a couple $100 million in revenue. When I left that business, though, I swore off the mortgage industry, although I still advise a few lenders to this day. Started advising companies on how to scale their companies, working with CEOs directly. Did that for a couple of years. Realized that I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I could fire them when they don't listen to me. So I decided to get into private equity. And about 3 years ago, I launched a firm which is now called Rise Growth Partners. Co-founded that with a couple other people, one of which is a very well-known guy named Joe Duran, who's in the wealth management world. He sold his company to Goldman Sachs and was the partner there. Partnered with him, and we were a private equity firm that invested in wealth management firms.
Okay.
So we raised about $250 million from a group called Charles Bank, which is basically the former private equity arm of the Harvard Endowment. And yeah, off to the races. So I've been building that company with Joe, my brother, and a bunch of other partners, and just realized that I didn't want to spend my time in the day-to-day of that business. So I recently made the transition to executive director and kind of deciding what I want to build next. I realized I'm an initiator and a manifester. I don't love the internal machinations of a business that much. and I was really knee deep in that at Rise, which it's an amazing firm. I'm really proud of what we're building there, but it's decided I wanted to go into a different direction.
I want to come back to Rise, but just quickly, would you say that the money source was arguably the most successful business that you created?
Yeah, that one. I mean, that one was definitely the most successful. My first business was number 40 in the Inc. 5000, and that was probably, it was a much smaller business. I built it
Yeah.
from nothing to 10 million in revenue in a couple years. It was a mortgage lender that my brother and I founded when we were 25. But the TMS was definitely a huge, like, I went from like never having built a couple $100 million company to essentially building something out of nothing that had never existed. Like that business, it was an old business that one of my co-founders my partner had founded. We came and kind of co-founded a business within it and then merged the businesses together. So it's kind of a weird story, but yeah, no, to grow a business from really a startup to 1,000 employees in 3 years, I'd say that's a pretty like rare occurrence. I don't know. I don't know anyone else that's done that, and I know a lot
That's
of
amazing.
entrepreneurs.
Did you sell it, or what happened to it?
um,
Sorry if that's tough. It looks like
yeah,
you left there in 2020, so it could be a COVID
yeah.
issue or something.
Yeah, we almost sold the business in we ran a process to sell the company in and I don't know how much of this I can actually say because I have a confidentiality agreement, but we almost sold it to a publicly traded company, and that we started that process at the end of 19, and in early 2020 we were in final diligence with a publicly traded REIT who was going to buy the company and merge with us. And this weird thing happened called COVID in March of 2020, and their stock went from $16 a share to $2 a share overnight, and so they decided that they didn't want to buy us anymore. I at that point had already stepped down as CEO of the company.
Okay.
I realized I didn't want to run the business anymore, and so but that the COVID was very good for the mortgage industry because rates went so low. So my business partners made like 5 years of profit in 1 year,
Hmm.
and that gave them a lot of ability to buy me out. So
Okay.
I had a very specific contract that had a buyout clause. So I exercised that and I got bought out.
So
That
Darius,
makes total sense. Yeah.
you mentioned the how many businesses have you started?
I think, it's funny, as I said, I'm like, I think 24 now because I wasn't counting Rise. So
Okay,
24
so
now? Yeah.
I was in a conversation yesterday with a guy who just left the largest consulting firm in the world, who's starting a business. And he said, I'm starting this business. I don't want to put any of my own capital in, and I don't want to lose any money. And I'm thinking to myself, you're an entrepreneur? Like I totally triggered me.
Yeah.
I didn't say it out loud, but it was like, well, that's, I have this weird idea that, like, the definition of entrepreneurship is that when you mess up, they take your house. Like, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right. That's probably wrong, but that's what I've held for many years. So I'm curious, like, what did you learn from the failures? Like, yeah, and how much money have you ever lost at one time? And is it a good thing or a bad thing? And what was the lesson?
Yeah. I mean, the most money I think I've lost. So I lost my first business, Twin. We grew from nothing to about a $2 million net worth, like
Yeah.
cash in the company. And when in August of '07, my business, that was a very traumatic experience. That was
Yeah.
my most traumatic business experience. Is
Yeah.
that we were, unfortunately, like, I'm going to date myself, but we were a subprime mortgage lender.
Mhm.
And we were 40th fastest growing, privately held company in the United States. Now at the time, like, you didn't know, I actually didn't even know I was a subprime lender because there was different. We were called Alt A, which is alternative to conventional lending. Subprime was a much dirtier word.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, if you were not Fannie or Freddie Mac, like conventional lending, everything became subprime. So I became subprime when I was trying not to be. So my business went from $1 million of revenue. I was 28 years old. I had grown the business. I started the business when I was 25. And this is like '03 when I started the business. It was very different to be a 25-year-old entrepreneur back then. Like, it was not normal. I lived in, I'm gonna give a lot of context here. I was living in San Francisco and I was the only entrepreneur I knew.
Huh.
Think
Wow.
about that. Think
Yeah.
about that, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
That like anyone that's hearing that's like that doesn't even make sense. And I'm
Right.
like, it did back then because you didn't get out of college and start a business when you were 25 back then. That was super abnormal. Like there was no founders clubs in college and stuff like that. Like there was hardly any entrepreneurial degrees you could get. So I was the only entrepreneur I knew. I lived in San Francisco. And so it was funny. So Mike and I know each other through GOT, Gathering of Titans, which is an alumni group for Birthing of Giants, which is EO's MIT program. I went there because I was the only entrepreneur I knew, and I like didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I remember when I did my introduction at Birthing of Giants, I said, "Yeah, you know, I'm the like I need what I say. I said all my friends are complaining about their bosses, and I want to complain about my employees, and I don't have anyone to complain to." You know, I was 26 years old at the time, and so anyway, that business we grew from nothing. I was like literally cold calling, like night side hustling, cold calling, turned that into $1 million a month in revenue business. A couple years later, and overnight the business went from $1 million of revenue to $150,000 of revenue, literally instantaneously when the markets crashed in '07.
Yeah.
Right.
Per month.
Yeah.
And so I had a $10 million business expense wise with a $2 million revenue business. So my $2 million went to almost zero in 90 days.
Yeah.
Because by the way, if you know business, you know that expenses are accrued in arrears. So it means like when your revenue drops that dramatically that quickly, you still have the expenses you haven't paid yet.
Yeah.
What did that teach you? What was like, is that, do you look back on that? I know that's heartbreaking and really hard, and it involved lots of people's lives that you loved. And what was the lesson, and how do you look at it now?
Multiple. There was 3 or 4 major lessons. Number one was that my friend group was my employees because I was 25. And when you're 25 and you hire a bunch of 20-year-olds, like that's who you party with when you guys have successful months. And like, so they were like my closest friends. So after that point forward, I although I'm friendly with my team members and I love them, I keep them at arm's length distance to a certain degree. I did not let them become I kept a friend group outside my company. That was like I literally lost my business and all my friends at the same time. Because when your business fails, your friends all leave and go do other things, and they don't want to be around you because you're their failure boss.
Follow-up question on that. Do those people still stay in touch with you, any of them? And do they think about you fondly or negatively? Because I think that's a misnomer that I think people have a lot of, they see you, they know you're suffering, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think they felt guilty too. But no, I'm cool with almost all of them. I think with the exception of like 1 or 2.
Got it.
No, I actually, so this business failed in '07. Oh, well, we shut it down in '10, but like there was a core group in it that was there in like '05, '06. And I told my brother, it was my business partner, so we should do a 20-year reunion in San Francisco. Like I'd love to see all those people.
That's number 2.
Yeah, so that was number 1. Number 2 was, I was a subprime mortgage lender, which meant like there was certain types of loans that we were doing that I just wasn't like, they were complex. Like the world economy almost imploded because of the types of lending that was happening then. And I was so motivated to make money. Then I was young. I really wanted to make money. I saw a clear pathway to doing it with this business that I didn't really question the product hard enough. Like, and had I even a 1% of my knowledge I have right now, I would have been like, oh, I'm not doing that business. Like that's, I could see why there could be issues with that product potentially if things ever go sideways. And so there was a moment where I was like, man, I'll never do a product ever again. I will never build a product or sell a product ever, ever, ever again that I'm not 100% sure is not going to hurt people. Because there was a lot of, like homeowners need to take a lot of responsibility for their actions. So they were very irresponsible with their actions. But, as a lender, we were enablers. We were making loans that ended up causing a lot of problems. I paid the price big time for years and years and years. Like years. It was very painful for about 5 years. So that was number 2. Number 3 is my business didn't make money. I didn't make money for 5 years. So I had 4 or 5 really good years, '02 to '06. I did not remember I said I only have taken paychecks that I earned myself.
Yeah.
I didn't take a paycheck for almost 5 years.
Wow.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 5 years, I didn't make $1 of pay. Um, it was brutal, and the pay was less the issue, and the bigger issue was like my confidence got destroyed.
Mm.
Because like when you're that unsuccessful for that long, I mean, I started 7 companies during that time and none of them worked. Um, but I've been told that I have a lot of grit and I have a lot of stick to itness, and I do have those things. So I ended up figuring it out and came out of it more successful than ever. In fact, in 2009 or 10 was when I had lunch with one of my former employees, and she was telling me about this guy who was he was $100 million. She called him the $100 million guy, this like entrepreneur out of New York City. I don't remember his name, but he was this guy that built $100 million companies. And at that point, I was like year 4 into like running a $2 million company that had been a $10 million company. And I'm like, I'm going to build a $100 million company. I remember like it was just like a knowing, and it took me, I think, 3 or 4 years until I hit that $100 million number. From that point,
Yeah. And I think
Amazing.
it's interesting because what was the social media platform where everybody showed up? You were involved in it for a while.
oh,
Just
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse. I showed up in Clubhouse, and I was like, oh, this might be cool. And every one of the rooms is like, how to become a millionaire. And it's like 20 somethings talking to each other about if you want to make your first $1 million. And I felt like it felt gross.
Yeah.
And I think that I have a buddy who's got a business that is just exploding right now, and they're going to do 12 million. Last year they did 4 million. He goes, Mike, we're a new business. I'm like, no, you're 21 years old. You've been doing the same thing for 21 years. It's like the Walmart story. They were in business for 20 years with like 1 or 2 stores, and then they figured it out. And all those lessons started to like, so when you say I'm going to do $100 million company, it wasn't in 3 years. It was in 20. You've been working on all these mistakes and
Yeah.
lessons and networks. That's what fueled it. Am I right, or am I
No,
exaggerating?
yeah. I mean, at that point, I'd probably been an entrepreneur for 14 or 15 years when I hit the number, because I think we hit 100 in 2015. That was the first time I ever hit it. Um, yeah, at that point, I'd been an entrepreneur for over 15 years. I had figured out, yeah, it really was a lot of puzzle pieces that came together, um, that allowed me to scale that quickly. You can't scale like to scale from 0 to 1,000 employees in 3 years and to be the CEO the whole time. Like you have to like, first of all, 0 to 300 was easy because I had all these skills that I developed. 300 to 1,000, I was back at Birthing of Giants, having no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I want you to think about that on your trip to Europe, because there's this thing that happens. People are like, I have to start over. I'm like, start over? Do you understand how many friends, relationships, leverage, wisdom that you have? You're not 21. You have all these things. And that's why you can pick up the phone and yeah, we raised $250 million. We started investing. Imagine having that conversation when you're 21. It would be impossible.
No, yeah, unless your father or mother or someone could give you the leg up, I don't see how you do it. Yeah, like I'm going to be building some new stuff this fall, and I'm excited for it. Like
Yes, you
I
are.
see it the way you see it now, which is in the past it's like, oh, I have to start over, and leaving an industry is hard. I left the mortgage industry, and what's funny is people are like, oh, my friends are coming to me like, you should build another mortgage company. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm not
Mhm.
interested in that. Um, you and I both have a good friend, Rick Sapio, who passed away last year. John Rulin passed away last year. My friend Robert Ellis passed away. Another friend of mine passed away a month ago. I had 4 friends pass away under the age of 65, between the ages of 44 and 65 in the last 9 months.
Yeah.
And that was very sobering for me. That was like, yeah, I'm going to make sure I'm spending my time exactly as I want to spend it, building the things I want to build the way I want to build them. And, that's a lot of wisdom that I've picked up over the years through pain and suffering to figure that out.
I'd love to talk about your new adventure, what you're thinking about, if you can share. But I'd maybe put that to a little bit later. I want to hit on this lesson thread a little bit, and Mike,
Sure.
I want to pick on you a bit because you've obviously started a number of companies as well, and I haven't really been with a number of different companies, and maybe I'll just quickly share one of my biggest career mistakes I made. And, you know, you look back on it and you're like, oh, okay, it all worked out. But I was, I was, I basically was in a good position. I was at E&Y, and then I was in a good position at AT&T, who was my client. And the person, my boss at the time at AT&T, he threw a lot of different pieces of the organization at me. And I ended up having a pretty large team, which was, you know, awesome for my confidence. And I felt really good about it. And he trusted me to do that. And then what did I do with that? I left like a month later. And it was really kind of not a great move, frankly. But it was the .com time, startup time. And we were, you know, I was based in Seattle, and we were just getting like 2 or 3 job offers a week, like sight unseen, just emails like, we will offer you this. We've heard about you, whatever. It was silly. It was absolutely silly. And the dumb thing I did is I started doing a lot of spreadsheet work on like how much, when I could retire in 3 years based on these stock options. And I took one. I took an opportunity, and I did no research. Like, yeah, I did zero investigation,
Totally out of character
zero
for you too,
research.
John. Totally out of character.
And I just totally jumped into it, and it was an amazing experience and totally worked my head off. But after 3 months of being there, I knew it wasn't going to work out. Like I knew this is never going to work out. These guys do not know what they're doing, and great salespeople, but there's no way this is going to go anywhere. And it didn't, you know, but it did give me a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in a sense. And, you know, maybe that fueled me to go into, you know, start slalom. But as I look back on it, it really was a mistake. And I burnt a bridge with this individual that empowered me with a lot of things at AT&T. And it took me a while to get back into AT&T as a consultant because of me feeling so bad about what I did. And then it was all driven on greed and money, frankly, kind of what you were talking about. Like when you start doing that, it's like you're probably doing something wrong in a way when you're just counting the beans and that's your motivation.
It's
Not
hard.
it's not
It's
good.
hard though. Like I think it's hard when especially like I was 21 years old. That's like in 1999, and I was like, man, I just want to make 6 figures. I remember,
Yeah.
like, I was like, I will do anything, like anything as long as it's legal, or you know. And so and I was just, I've been a poor student my whole life. I was like, I worked for, I literally until I like started my first business, I was successful. I had anywhere between 3 and 7 jobs at any time. Like that was normal for me from like the age of 18. So I
Yeah.
was like, dude, screw this. I'm over this. I want to make money, you know? So it's hard when you haven't had money or haven't made money and you think and you start imagining all the cool things you're going to do with the money. By the way, like the spreadsheets, I've built a ton of those, you know? None of them have ever worked out the way that ever, not even once has it ever worked out the way I thought it would. Not even one time. Like so like if you're listening to this and you start building your spreadsheets and plan for your future money that isn't here, like burn that thing. Um, so no, I don't now. I don't do like you know I don't do that anymore, and I'm in a financial position where it doesn't matter that much. Um, but it's interesting. Like you know, I think there's a lot of ego involved. This is why kind of when Mike was asking me how do I introduce myself, like the biggest thing that I've figured out, and I would love to hear your guys' perspective on this over the last 5 years. You know, I exited the money source in 2020 and literally had a list of like 5 things I was going to do. I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to consult. I'm going to coach CEOs, and I'm going to get into private equity. I did all 5 of them, you know, and I'm like, when I do X, I will feel Y. Right. And so what my realization is this, I think there's a line in the sand in life. And on one side of the line of the sand, you have this thing that I call the game. And that's making money, doing business, growing in businesses, like going, doing deals, you know, getting the win, hitting the number, making some dough, you know, creating some impact, and, you know, maybe winning a few awards here and there, getting prestige, getting status, having people say I'm famous when I go on a podcast, all that stuff. That's the game, right?
You did it.
And then there's this other thing called real life. And when you're young, you actually think the game is real life. And real life is, who do I love? What friendships am I building? What bonds am I building? How am I raising my kids? What impact am I creating outside of myself that I don't get credit for? Whose lives am I impacting in positive ways to make them have a better life? That's the juice. That's what really matters. And I think when you're young, you take the game and you call it life. And for me, what I've realized at my tender age of 47, I probably realized this 2 years ago, 45, is there's a line, and the game's the game and life is life. And I have spent a lot of my time, wasted a lot of my time acting like the game was life and then squeezing life into the game whenever I got a hot moment. And what
Yeah.
I've learned now is that I love playing the game. I freaking love it. It's like so fun, but it's a game. And it doesn't matter. And no one's going to give a shit when I'm gone what happened in the game at all. But they will care what happened in life.
Yeah.
And I've gotten clear on that. For me, like the minute I got clear on that, I was like, cool. I don't feel bad when I'm playing the game. And if it's taking over too much of my life, I have an awareness about it and I go back to real life.
So let me build on that if I could. I think that I totally agree with everything you just said. And you mentioned Rick Sapio, you mentioned John Ruhlin, both were forces of nature.
Total.
I would hold up Randy Woo Woo Cohen in the same regard, Mike Michalowicz. I think that there are certain people, and the reason why the audience is loving what you just said, Darius, was not only was it wise and insightful, it also was authentic. And I think that you hear people have star quality. Man, everybody just loves that guy. They just light up the room. I have this thesis that as kids we believe we can draw and sing and dance, and then along the road people convince us that we can no longer draw and sing and dance. And so, but there are some people. There are some people that never lose that boyish sense of wonder or that childlike sense of wonder. And when they walk in the room, you just like them. And I think around 50 or 60, most people start feeling like, oh, screw this. F it, man. I'm just going to be myself. And they realize what you said. There's a line in the sand, there's a game, and there's life. But they play both with as their authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God. And I think that the reason we so admire people that are that have maintained that childlike sense of wonder is because we see something in them that we remember about ourselves and we long to get it back. And
Totally.
so, like, if I could wave a magic wand and just make my kids believe in themselves enough so they could just be themselves before the age of 50, like just be who you are, man. Because that's the magic that lights up a room. That's the star quality that people, there's something about that person. Well, what's about the self-esteem? They feel fine. They're playing the game. They're living life, but they're doing it as their whole authentic self. So that's my wish for all my friends. And, you mentioned Rulin and Sapio, and man, those two were like total WYSIWYGs. Every room, they were the same person.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's and the other two folks that I don't know if you know Robert Ellis that well. He was the guy that was dying of cancer. He did the opening of when I was chair of GOT.
I remember
And
him.
he was saying like this guy was the stud, and this other guy Kevin Delory, who you don't know, same deal, larger than life personality. What was interesting to me was like all four of them had larger than life personalities, and I'm like, dude, here 1 minute, gone the next.
They were asteroids.
Total, right?
Yeah.
And so I consider myself to have a larger than life personality, and I was like, who knows when I'm out?
Yeah.
And that happening this past, since August till now, that shook me up. Where I was like, I've been pulling punches, in certain parts of my life, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking done.
Yeah, I believe
Like
you.
I'm
I hear
showing
it.
up.
So here's a question, switching subjects. This is a selfish question, so forgive me. John and I are just starting this journey together, talking to people. We're trying to figure it out. What makes a great podcast guest? What makes a great podcast host?
I think a good podcast host is curious and asks great questions that are intriguing, and it makes the guest feel very comfortable. So I think that those are you're able to pull good questions and good pieces of information out of your guests. And I mentioned that I have a podcast. Mike knows that he's been on it before, a couple times actually. But I've been doing podcasting now for 5 years, and I've done hundreds of interviews, 500 interviews now. So I think that that's like that. Like whenever I feel like I've really killed it on the show as the interviewer, it's that the feedback I always get from the guests is, those were great questions. You gave me energy, and I've never been asked that question before. So I interviewed Will Guidara, who wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. I don't know if you guys know that book. He was the co-founder. It's an amazing book on customer experience. But him and his partner started this business called 11 Madison Park, which became the #1 restaurant in the world in New York City. It's a really good book about client experience. But I interviewed him. I didn't know him that well. He's married to a woman named Christina Tossi, who owns Milk Bar. She was the confectionery chef at Momofuku. They're like famous in the food world. And I got him on the show, and he was feeling under the weather beginning of the show. I could tell. He told me, he's like, "Hey, I'm not feeling that well." And at the end of the show, he's like, "Man," we were like BFFs at the end of the show, which I was pumped about, because I like him and I like his work, and I did want to become his friend. And but he said, "Yeah, you made me feel comfortable, and you gave me so much energy. I got energy from the show." So I do think asking good questions, giving energy, making people feel comfortable, that's good. If you want to be a good podcaster, I think that's important. I think from a being interview standpoint, a couple things. Number one is, don't talk for 8 minutes straight, because nobody wants to hear anyone talk for 8 minutes straight. So I do think understanding a pacing of a good conversation. And by the way, I talk a lot, so like I break my own rule on this a lot. But I think I get away with a ton of shit most people don't get away with. I get a ton in life.
Rules don't apply to me. I'm Darius.
Like they don't. Like I can say stuff that if you said it, you'll look like a jerk, and I look funny when I say it. But talking too much, if you're being interviewed, I often, when I start the show, I'll tell guests, I say, "Hey, listen, if I ever try to edge into the conversation and interrupt you, it means you're talking too long, and you need to wrap up your thought, and because I have questions for you." I do that because I've had people literally talk for like 18 minutes straight. I'm like, dude, I just lost the whole audience. Nobody wants to hear someone talk for 18 minutes straight. So I do think a person who's being interviewed takes gives the right amount of information and wraps up the thought. Number one. Number two, I think that a really good guest is someone that is there to serve. They're there to teach the audience. They give up their best information. They're fun. They're interesting. And lastly, I think they ask the host questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a dialogue it's a conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. My favorite guests ask me questions, but I like to talk, so maybe that's just me.
John now is like, I hope you're listening, Mike, because I send him like a 2-paragraph text, and his answer is yes.
To the point. John, you look like you had a question.
No, I was just thinking that it's better. It's always better when it is an actual dialogue, and I like when the guest asks questions too. Actually, even the podcast that I'm listening to, put it that way. Going back to your life and what did you call it? Not fun. The game. Sorry, the game and life. Do you not? And maybe this is me, but I do integrate them. Like I have 3 sets of friends. I have my friends that I grew up with on the south side of Chicago. I have my friends that mostly, like in the neighborhood, that mostly came from my wife, Ellen, who's Mike's sister, very social person, and then their husbands happen to be all super cool. So like that's another friend group. And then my other friend group is like literally people I work with. And I know you had that rule that you don't have friends that you work with, but I don't know, we have a decent sized company now, and so there's enough. I'm not the CEO, so maybe that I'm not really the CEO, so maybe that helps with it. But I think I've had a lot of people like work for me that I'm literally one of their best friends. So like
Yeah.
Do you not think you can do both? And then again, on the impact piece, you were talking about impact. A huge thing that keeps me going is and gives me tons of energy is when I know I'm having an impact on our employees and their lives and maybe their careers. And that like is super cool part of my life that is integrated into the game, I guess. Does that
Yeah.
does that
Does
jive at all, or like do you think that
totally.
I'm making that up and
No, no,
I'm maybe not being intellectually honest with myself or something?
no, no. I mean, like, look, I think I do both, right? So, I guess what I should say is that I do have friends at work. Like, one of my best friends was my co-founder of TMS.
Hmm.
He's literally one of my best friends. Um, and my brother is one of my, co-founder of all my businesses. My twin
Yeah.
brother. I do make friends within the business. I'm I love people, so I'll make friends. What I don't do, yeah. So as CEO, I do have deep friendships with some of the folks I work with. I think I misspoke. Sorry, it's been a while since I thought about that. Um, One of the things that I do is I don't I make sure I have a friend group outside of the business,
Yeah. Okay.
like a substantial one that
Yeah.
like I engage with a lot. And what happened in my first business was it was my first business. I was obsessed with it. I was working 12 to 14 hours a day. I was in my 20s. All my employees were working 12 to 14 hours a day. They were in their 20s. We would leave work and go party together. And then we
Yeah.
would party on the weekends and we do vacations together because we were like loving life and making money. And we were in our 20s making a lot of money and nobody else had money except us. So we would go do things with our money together because nobody else could afford the shit that we were doing. And so what happened is in banking, we call that concentration risk. I had way too much concentration in one place. In my business was my life and my friends, everything. And now, and again, correcting myself, I decided, hey, I have to have my friend group out of the business. And the next business or two, I kept people at arm's length to a certain degree. But I was very close with them. To your point around impact, yeah, my business is how I make impact. That's how I leverage most of the impact. I also care to make impact in my personal life too, but the business is where I create impact. And so, for me, I actually created a matrix around this, which is I only focus on three things in my life. I focus on where do I want to create impact, and I can do it in no more than three areas.
Hmm.
I focus on what relationships I want to build, and I focus on in what three areas I want to do that in, and I focus on what three areas I want to focus on my health. And it's real simple. For
Hmm.
me, I want to do impact with whatever I'm entrepreneurial about. So at the time, right now it's private equity. I like to do it in the podcast, and I like to coach CEOs, and I like to spend my time in those. And I kind of balance between the three. Okay, in friendships and building relationships, I have my tight family, my wife, my kids, my brother, my sister, my mom, my in-laws, like family, right? I
Yeah.
have my old friends, people that I've met. I have friends that I've known that I'm still friends with from elementary school
Yep.
and junior high school, but deep friends for 20, 30 years. And then I moved to Austin 8 years ago, and I was like, man, I want to build a friend group here. So I've been focusing energy on building a friend group in Austin. So I bounce between those three. And if I'm not tending, they're kind of like gardens. I water them, and I'll go water the other one. If I'm lacking, I'll come back and I'll go water the one I've been neglecting. So those are the six areas I work in between relationships and impact. And the last one's health, and that's mind, body, and spirit. So am I doing meditation? Am I working out? Am I, stretching? Am I eating well? And if I'm falling short on that, I'll go start cleaning up on the areas. But I'm always cleaning up these 9 gardens in my life.
Nice.
And for me, they might change. So spirit and mind, it might change. I might be doing, meditation, and I might move to breath work. And I might then my wife and I are talking about going and joining a church right now because we're interested in the Baha'i faith. I've never gone to church my whole life. My parents were like anti-religion, but
Hmm.
I'm like, that seems like it's kind of up my alley. Like, we're like seriously considering going to it. So for me, it's just kind of focusing on these 9 areas. And when I stopped doing, which is really interesting, I'm thinking about writing a book on this whole thing. Is I stopped having these like hardcore goals where if I didn't hit them, I wasn't happy. Like, oh,
Hmm.
I got to hit X amount in money, and I got to hit X amount and go on this many trips and all this shit that's like, if I don't do it, then I'm not winning. And I was like, Am I hanging out with my family a lot? Am I hanging out with my friends? Am I calling up old friends to see how they're doing? Giving them some love. Am I focusing on the podcast? Am I doing stuff to start the next business or build another company? Am I helping entrepreneurs? If I'm not, let me go put some energy there. And then what am I like? Let me step on the scale. Let me make sure I'm like, taking care of myself, you know? And what I found was if I'm taking care of my health and my mind and my body and spirit, it gives me a lot of like resourcefulness and resources to do the other six. So
I used to be like that, like with too goal oriented almost. I
oh
think
yeah,
it's
me too.
healthy, but like too much to the point like it was almost like just the metric and I didn't even care about
Totally.
anything else. It was it was stupid. But
It's
hey,
a huge mistake. Huge
you,
mistake for
you,
me.
you mentioned you might write a book. I mean, and then earlier you said what makes a good uh, person to interview, and you're doing it like this is gift, like this gift. You could create that book out of those three, that platform that you just talked about,
Yeah.
and the threes there, and teach people about like how to rotate them, how to think about those things, maybe a process to go through what's important. Anyway, that was really, really cool and helpful. Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome.
Hey, John, the funny part about that story is what led to that was I had this complete breakdown post exit. Like
Mm.
it was summer of 22, so almost 3 years ago. And I had this very spiritual awakening. And I was like, man, I'm tired.
Mm.
I'm tired. I'm tired of like trying to like my ego had, like there's this concept, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, called hungry ghost. You guys are familiar with that term?
Mm.
It's a Buddhist spirit demon called the hungry ghost. And you can Google it, like type in the hungry ghost and click images, and you'll see images of what this demon looks like. And I had the hungry ghost living in me. There wasn't enough money, enough accolades, enough winning, enough status, enough anything to make me happy.
Mm.
I would eat, consume it, and I'd be like, next. Oh, I hit 100. I swear to God, this happened in my business. When I hit 100 million in revenue, I'm like 200 million.
Yeah.
I hit 200 million. I'm not kidding. I'm like 500 million. And I didn't even enjoy it when I hit those numbers. And when I was at 500, I'm like, how do I get to 1 billion? And then I was just like, dude, what's the point? Like, I'm not I hit it and then nothing happens. I just push the number up. And when I hit exit, I was in Oaxaca, Mexico with my family for a month in July of 2022, and I had a full blown meltdown. I was anxious. I was just beating myself up about my exit. I was just like, I was so mean to myself, and I was literally more anxious than I've ever been in my whole life. And I was like, dude, what's the point? Like, what's the point of all this? Like, and by the way, on paper, couldn't have had a better life. Financially free, great family, living in Mexico, good business. And I'm sitting here like on paper, any normal human beings reads what my life looks like on paper, and they're like, great kids, my wife loves me, and they're like, I'm healthy, and they're like, dude, and I'm 95% of my mentality was ungratefulness and unhappiness. What I didn't have in my life.
It must have been fun to be around.
I actually was fun to be around because all of it was internal. You were around me then. That was right after I did GOT that year.
Yeah.
No, I was great. I'm always great to be around, but inside I'm just sitting there stabbing myself constantly.
That's interesting.
And so I had a moment where like I had a spiritual moment, and I did a couple podcasts on this because I've gone public on it, where I started doing this meditation that I learned through Joe Dispenza, where you essentially surrender to a higher power. And in the middle of my meditation, I felt God enter my body when I surrendered to God. And I was like, and I'm not a religious guy. Like I don't go to church or anything like that. So it was kind of weird to have that happen. But I was like, you know what, man, I've been white knuckling this shit for 40 years and I'm unhappy and I'm not getting what I want. I'm like, maybe I'm here for a different reason. And maybe I'm not in control. So this so anyway, the book's going to be about that.
You mentioned the Baha'i faith. Steve Sarowitz, he was the founder of Paylocity. Do you know him?
I was a client at Paylocity, but I don't know him.
So Steve and I went to high school together, actually.
Oh, no way.
And he founded Paylocity, he sold it, and now he's also the founder of Wayfarer Studios, the whole Blake Lively thing. Like that's his studio.
Really?
So, but more importantly, he's a great guy. He's a big-hearted guy, and he's very involved in Baha'i faith. So, if you'd like to meet him, to interview him, or become friends, or hear more about his faith, I'd be happy
Yeah,
to make that connection.
I
Um,
would love to.
Listen, I'm looking at the clock. The theme of this podcast, we always wait to the end. It's your seat at the table. I'm going to do a twist for you, Darius. So
So,
you had a seat at the table. You've had a seat at lots of tables. You had to make a decision. I want to give you the context. Okay. When to quit or grit. You're either running a company. When do you know time when it's time to dig in and keep fighting, or to walk away? And if you could, when you're working for someone, when do you understand? When do you think it's time to stick with them or walk away?
um, well, I have a simple rule, which is if I'm not having fun, then that's a really important signal. So I should be having fun. I should enjoy it. And there's Ray Dalio has
Yeah,
has a saying which I'm going to blank on right now, which is basically struggle well. That's his saying,
okay,
right? And so I don't mind struggling well, right? What struggling, you'll know when you're struggling well because you're doing it from a place of purpose and you feel that motivation to like work harder when things are hard.
yeah,
Um, and so for me, whether it's your own business or whether it is with, working for someone else, I'm always down to struggle well. There's got to be some fruits. It's got to be fun too, but I'm okay to struggle well. There's seasons of struggle that happen in life. Um, but when it's not fun and there's no hope, I'm out. And
got it.
then that's it.
And
Like I
now,
have to
now
have
with your
hope.
work, is that same? Is it exactly the same rule if you're working for someone? If you're not having
100%.
fun anymore, okay, that's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
answer.
yeah. And the
Great
other
answer.
thing that I would tell you is this: if I'm working for someone else, my threshold's way lower, right?
Never
It's
worked
your own
for a jerk.
business. If you got to wind down your own, I've had to wind down business before. That sucks. It's a lot of work. So if I'm gonna wind down a business, that's is it's going to take a lot for me to say I'm cool. But if I'm working for someone else, dude, I'll give them slightly less loyalty than they give me, and whatever that means. So because
Yeah,
like I don't have to stay. I don't like there's no unless there's a fiduciary reason for me to stay. I'm out. So for me, it's like it doesn't matter. I'll struggle well. That's part of my personality. I have to feel purpose. I'll struggle with people who I love, who are going to war with me, but if I'm not having fun and there's no hope, I'm out.
awesome. Well, I really appreciate your friendship, giving a few moments to John and I. Really great, Darius. I think you're making a huge impact. I hope you understand that behind your back, people say really good things about you. And it's been fun watching you put a dent in the universe and learning from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you having me on the show and excited to put more dents in the universe.
There you go. Me too. All right.
You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.